Hey guys, it's Max. We just got in the brand new iPad Air 4, and today we are going to be comparing it against the 2020 iPad Pro. We're gonna look at everything, the performance of the new A14 and how much faster, or is it faster than the A12Z? We'll look at the new Touch ID compared to Face ID. We'll compare the speakers. Are they as good as these amazing ones on the iPad Pro? And does the Apple Pencil work just as well without ProMotion? Let's find out. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, I wasn't that excited for this iPad Air 4. It's really similar to the iPad Pro, but so many of you guys keep asking for it. You can't wait to see videos on it, so I'm glad we have it in. Now, I have the green color, and that's one of the things you can't get with the iPad Pros. The Airs have a lot of cool color options. Right away, two things stand out. Now, the most obvious one is the camera bump, but we're also missing this band at the top, which even the 2018 iPad Pro had. The new iPad Air 4 has the same camera module from the previous iPad Pro, whereas with the 2020, we have this much larger iPhone 11 and 12 style design. We have an additional ultra-wide camera, and we have the LiDAR sensor. The last difference is that the iPad Pro does have a flash, which could be useful for scanning documents. Now, apart from this, they look very similar. That's because recently the iPad Air just keeps following the iPad Pro's design. So if we take a look at it, they look similar. We can put them up on their sides, and they have this new flat edge design that we have with the new iPhones. It looks really nice, it looks more modern. And as you see, when we stack them up like this, they look basically identical. The size is the same. Now, why would Apple want to make a potential iPad Pro killer with the same design? Well, that is to sell more Magic keyboards. And I have to say that I love this thing other than the price. And if you guys want to see our full detailed review on this Magic keyboard, search up Max Tech Magic Keyboard and you'll find it. And also, so it could support the new Apple Pencil 2, which has more features, it's nicer, and it's way more convenient to charge. Now, there's a couple more external differences that I noticed. First off, we do have two grills on each side. Even though the new iPad Air 4 doesn't have quad speakers like the iPad Pro, it does have dual stereo speakers. And these speaker grills, the actual cutouts are slightly larger. Now, the other one is that the iPad Air 4 has just two microphones. It has one where the camera is and one up top, whereas the Pro has two on top, and then it has one additional one on the side over here. Now, we're gonna be testing out the speakers and the microphone quality in just a bit. And the last difference is that we now have Touch ID instead of Face ID. So let's go ahead and set it up. It's right here, and it's pretty dang large. It's very interesting to feel it. And I have to say that it feels kind of awkward reaching up and around the corner to reach the sensor. I feel like it would have been better on the side over here, like on some Samsungs, but I guess it depends if you use your iPad more vertically or in landscape. I do have to add that I'm very used to just tapping on the screen and swiping up on my iPad or my iPhone, and now you do have to go ahead and put your finger up there. It's an extra step, and with that Magic keyboard, it is gonna be a little bit less convenient. And now let's compare the displays, and I didn't think that I would notice a bigger bezel on the iPad Air 4 because it's a 10.9-inch display compared to 11. That's almost identical, just a few pixels, but you guys can clearly see that the bezel is thicker. Now, if you're buying just the iPad Air 4, you don't have a Pro, you won't notice this. The bezel's even on all sides, and it's a nice improvement over the iPad Air 3. Now, I can't tell any difference in terms of quality. The detail is identical because the pixels per inch are very close, but let's go ahead and test out the brightness because the iPad Pro can reach 600 nits compared to 500. Now, along with that, I'm noticing that the Air 4 actually loses brightness much more so if you're looking at an off angle. So at the top right now, the brightness is identical, but from the side, it's a lot dimmer. And let's check out the reflectivity. We're gonna shut these off. And very interesting. I was not expecting this. So the new iPad Air 4 is actually less reflective than the iPad Pro. And instead of it looking slightly bluish here on the ceiling tile, it looks more black. and it's just the reflections aren't as sharp. So it looks like Apple might have newer, better coatings. And now let's talk about ProMotion. This is probably one of the biggest differences between these two tablets, and it's really hard to show off on video. So we actually set our A7S III above to 4K 120 frames per second. So we're gonna show you guys some slow motion clips, and let's just go side to side here at the home screen. I mean, to me, this is very noticeable. We wanted ProMotion on the new iPhone 12s, which we don't have, but here the iPad Pro is insanely smooth, perfectly, whereas as the Air 4, it just looks like the previous Air or even the budget iPad. Now I don't think that alone makes the iPad Pro worth it, but having 9 milliseconds of latency with the Apple Pencil 2 could. This is just incredible. In real time, I'm not noticing any latency whatsoever. There's no lag. Everything's perfect. And here's a clip in slow motion. You guys maybe will notice a little bit, but it is perfect for regular use. Now, Apple doesn't tell us what the latency is with the iPad Air 4. So finally, let's find out. All right, and that is very quick too. Surprisingly quick. Now I am noticing one thing. When I'm going quickly, I don't know if it's latency or if it's just the graphics. Almost like it has a dropped frame or something, but this is miles better than when I tested some of the older Galaxy tabs where those would lag behind quite a bit. Let's try something a little thinner and slower. And looking here from the side, I could tell that there is a little bit of latency. It's just the refresh rate. It's refreshing at half the speed of the iPad Pro. Now, realistically, for most people, it's still gonna be just fine. And now let's go ahead and compare the speakers, and I'm so curious how the iPad Air 4 will keep up. Go ahead and put on your best pair of headphones and let's take a listen. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but hearing it live, I have to say that I was hoping for a little bit more. We have 4 speaker grills here, the speaker cutouts are larger, but the bass isn't as deep, the mids aren't as full, and the highs, especially the highs, are not as crisp and clean. That is because we don't have any sound coming from these speaker grills right here. They're just for looks, I guess, compared to the iPad Pro, which we have the mids and the bass coming from the bottom firing speakers, and then from the top ones, that's where we have the higher frequencies. And it ends up sounding great. It's louder as well, sounds better overall, and it's also more immersive. You hear sound just coming right through the screen. It's a very great experience for watching movies. Now, that doesn't mean that the iPad Air 4 is bad. It's a great upgrade over the previous iPads that have just speakers just at the bottom, but it doesn't sound as good when you're listening to them side by side. And one other thing that really stands out, when I'm playing back a video or listening to something in the vertical or portrait mode, I hear majority of the sound from my left ear, and my right ear hears a lot less. So you definitely could tell that the speakers are on this left-hand side. And now let's compare the microphone quality along with the front-facing camera, which is great for FaceTime. This is recording on the iPad Pro, and this is the iPad Air 4's video and microphone quality. Go ahead and let me know which one looks better and which one sounds better down in the comment section below. And now let's get into performance. We're gonna use Geekbench 5 here, and let's go ahead and start our CPU test, and we'll see, can the new 5nm A14 keep up with the monster A12Z? And we have our results, and this is interesting. As far as single core score, the new A14 is over 40% faster from 1122 to 1588. That is a big jump. But as far as multi-core score, the iPad Pro is actually about 10% faster. We also have a difference in RAM. The iPad Pro has 6 gigs of RAM compared to 4 gigs on the iPad Air 4. So if you're somebody who does a lot of multitasking, maybe you're doing things like video editing or something else that's very difficult, the iPad Pro might be a little bit better, but for more basic, simple tasks, the iPad Air 4 might actually be quicker. And now let's compare the graphics using the metal test. And this is where it's gonna be interesting because the iPad Pro is an absolute beast in terms of graphics performance. All right, and wow, the new iPad Air 4 actually beats out the iPad Pro in terms of graphics. We have 12,000, which is super high, and 12,542 on the Air 4. Now this is crazy because the A14 in here has a 4-core GPU compared to an 8-core GPU. And this means that if you're somebody that's gaming or doing things that use metal, you're not gonna be missing out on any performance. And the next iPad Pro or the Apple Silicon Max are gonna be absolutely crazy based on this 5nm technology. And now let's briefly talk about battery life. Now, of course, we just got the iPad Air 4, but there's a couple things that we can grab from what we know so far. Now, the batteries should be identical in these two, just like we had in the 2018 iPad Pro. And with that, the iPad Air 4, it has 2 less speakers to power, and the display isn't as bright either. And on top of that, we have the new A14 that is more efficient. It's using 5nm, and as far as the graphics cores, we have 4 of them, and they're very powerful, but it's 4 to power instead of 8. So if we had to guesstimate, we would say that real-world battery life will be a bit better on the iPad Air 4. Now, along with that, I also want to point out that the new iPad Air 4 does come with a 20-watt USB Type-C charger instead of 18 watts, so you should be able to charge up just a little bit faster as well. And now let's go ahead and talk about the cameras, and we have a lot of similarities and differences. Now, the front-facing camera is 7 megapixels on both of them. They look like they're the same ones, but because of the Face ID, we actually have the ability to shoot portrait shots, which you can't on the iPad Air 4. Now, the main sensor on the back, they're both 12 megapixels, so there's really no differences there. But the iPad Pro does have an ultra-wide camera, which is 10 megapixels. Now, personally, I don't really know what would be a good use for this. Let us know what you would use it for down in the comment section below, and also let us know which of these photos look better. The Pro also has a flash, which could be nice for scanning documents in bad lighting. Here you guys can see the difference. And the last difference is that along with the extra camera, we have the LiDAR sensor or scanner, and that will help out with AR for measuring, just for making everything a lot more accurate. And along with that, you could do things like scanning objects into 3D models. And before we get into the final verdict of which one of these you should buy, let's talk about prices and storage. The iPad Pro comes with 128 gigs of storage compared to 64 on the iPad Air 4. Now, if you need more than 64 gigs, you actually have to spend $150 and get 256. So there's no 128 gig option. And that brings it up much more in price to the $800 iPad Pro. So instead of $600 for the base, you're at $750. If you're somebody that wants to watch movies, maybe surf the web, do some email, maybe play a little bit of games, 64 gig might be enough. But if you want to do things like edit photos and videos and use it as a laptop replacement, 64 gigs really isn't enough. And for our verdict, which one of these should you buy? And I have to say the answer has never been more clear to me when I'm doing these kinds of comparisons. If you're looking to buy the iPad Air 4 and you're gonna buy the base model and you're gonna use it just by itself without the keyboard or the Apple Pencil, and you're not gonna upgrade the storage, I would absolutely get the iPad Air 4. It's gonna be a great device and a great upgrade over previous iPads. But with that said, if you're considering upping the storage, or if anytime in the future you know you're gonna buy an Apple Pencil and possibly the Magic Keyboard, there is no reason for you to spend the money on the iPad Air 4 and save that little bit, because the price difference once you add in the extras, once you add in the storage, it's very small, and you get so much extras with the iPad Pro. You get the better display with better brightness, better viewing angles. Along with that, the speakers are quite a bit better. You have the extra storage, and you have ProMotion, which is excellent just all around, and especially if you want to use the Apple Pencil. Along with that, if you're watching this in the future, go ahead and check the links in the video description. We'll have links to both of these because the iPad Pro could be on sale. We've seen it on sale before, whereas the iPad Air 4 is a new device. It's gonna stick to that $600 price. Of course, I wanna hear your guys' opinions down in the comments section below, and we are gonna be using the iPad Air 4 for a bit. We're gonna have a gaming comparison. We're gonna do a 1 week later real world comparison between these two. What are the other small things that I noticed as I'm using the iPad Air 4? So make sure you guys click that circle above to subscribe, and if you wanna see a couple great videos, we have some right over there. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next video.